Welcome to the October 10th, 2023 meeting of the Dover Area School Board. If you would please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Mrs. Allman, could we have the roll call, please?
Mrs. Britton. Mr. Deschaux.
Here.
Mr. Eifert.
Here.
Mr. Emig.
Here.
Mrs. Meese. Here. Mr. Rawhauser.
Here.
Mrs. Whitmer. Here. Mr. Wolverton.
Here.
7 present.
Okay, thank you. We'll go right into our presentations tonight. First, we have Dr. Hauk with federal programs.
Good evening, everybody. One of the requirements that I have for all of the federal program grants that I write is stakeholder engagement. So every year I'd like to present to the board how we're using our federal dollars. The first half of this is review. So I'm just going to review what we've been using our ESSERS money for. And then I would like to inform the board how we are using our Titles 1, 2, and 4 dollars. And certainly if you have any questions or feedback, I'd be happy to take those questions from you. So the grants that we'll be reviewing today is ESSERS 3, of course, the Titles 1 through 4, the 2.5% set aside, the 7% set aside, and then the homeless children and youth. ESSERS 3 was $4,768,000 and some odd dollars. And there were some rules about how that needed to be spent. 20% of that money must be used to address the impact of lost instructional time. And the remaining 80% had to be used in one of those 4 buckets. So the way we chose to spend ESSERS, for the 20% lost instructional time, we used it to offset some salaries. We are using that money to pay for 2 years of the middle school literacy coach. We paid for 1 year of all 4 of the elementary interventionists. That's salary and benefits. We also used it to pay for the middle school dean of students to offset that salary and benefits, and for the Dover Cyber Academy instructor. The remaining 80% we have used for facilities improvement. Now you'll notice that 2 of them have been crossed out because we have changed our minds. We did move forward with the roof repairs, but with the leftover money, instead of doing the control board hardware and the HVAC boilers, we are going to do HVAC at North Salem and HVAC at Libe, and I believe, Mrs. Weaver, the board will be hearing from Crabtree.
During November, yes, they were.
In the November board meeting to get more specifics on those 2 items. So you can see that with the instructor salaries and the roof repairs, we do still have about 1.5 or 1.6 million that we will need to use on the HVAC at Libe and North Salem. So the 2.5% set aside was $55,892. We spent that all. That's gone. We used it for the transition coordinator at the high school. She provides training and consultation for teachers, parents, and students. She coordinates agency to engage the students with disabilities and transitioning into career-focused activities. So she works with that population of students at the high school to help them to get careers, to get jobs once they get out of high school. So there are no funds remaining there. The 7% set aside was $370,000, and there were some rules about how we had to spend that as well. So 30% of that money must be spent on social emotional learning. Then an additional 10% must be spent on professional development for social emotional learning, and 8% for reading improvement, and then the rest was other. All of it had to be used to help either mitigate learning loss or mitigate the spread of COVID. We had $52,940 each for after-school programs and a summer school program. So for the SEL set aside, we used it mostly to provide mental health services to our students. Satchel Paulson, DESA, and the BH Works are screeners that either teachers filled out or we administered to our older students to help identify students who may need some help. We had the Blues program as a small group intervention that our social worker and school counselors do with our kids. Check and Connect is sort of a mentoring program that we do at the high school and middle school. Hope Squad is suicide prevention. Habitudes is the leadership curriculum that we were using at middle school and high school. We used this money for the PBIS app. We used it for school-based therapy, where students were seeing a counselor in the school setting, but it was an outside counselor. The Reboot app was just an app that we used for 1 year, which was a mindfulness relaxation. A lot of the elementary teachers use that during quiet time every day. And then we still have $900 left over for other professional development that I can use. And the next slide. So this is the professional development for social emotional learning that we sent some of our teachers to. Responsive Classroom is something that the district has been using for many years. And some new teachers that were not trained, or some middle school teachers that had not yet been trained, we sent a bunch of them over the summer to get that Responsive Classroom training. As you can see, most of this was spent on my school counselors and my social worker, even the school psychologist. CSTAG is threat assessment training. So we trained our mental health professionals on how to do threat assessments. Girls Circle is another small group that our social worker does with some students. SAP is the Student Assistance Program. We have that in all of our middle and our high school. We have a SAP counselor, but anybody who serves on that team has to be trained. So we gave them that training. Dr. Poland is a renowned suicide prevention expert. He ran a professional development day with all of our counselors and our psychologists for suicide prevention. And then we sent some counselors to a conference. And then our encore teachers, our music, art, and PE teachers did a Responsive Classroom book study. For reading improvement, we had an after-school program that we paid for. That was a total of $24,000, but we paid for it out of a couple of different buckets of this grant. But it helped the most at-risk students were participated in an after-school program to help with reading. And then, of course, we bought materials that are aligned with the science of reading for our reading specialists and our classroom teachers. And this is actually the wrong slide, so I'm going to skip over that, and we'll talk to you about that in a little bit. After school program, all of our buildings last year offered after school. We paid the teachers to stay after school and have some tutoring for our students at every single level, elementary through high school. And so that's where that money is paid for the salaries and benefits for those teachers for those after school hours. And then the summer school program, our students who are in Title I reading intervention, we invited them, through their parents, of course, we invited them to participate in a reading program over the summer, and we used funds for that, and we used funds for some credit recovery. Okay. So a few other things that are not on the slide that I did use ESSER's money for 7% set aside is we updated some wireless access points. The classroom collaborative reading pilot that we are doing, that money came out of ESSER's as well. The money we spent on those materials for the pilot. Some new teacher training. I paid some teachers to do curriculum writing through ESSER's. Training for the science standards. We have new science standards coming in the 25-26 school year, brand new. It's going to totally revamp how we do science. So we are getting a jump start on that and getting teachers trained now to prepare for the 25-26 school year. So we're paying the IU for that training. And then a variety of professional development will fall under that. Okay, so that's how the ESSERS is being spent. Title I is $610,000, and the purpose of Title I is it's For schools in which children from low-income families, we have to have at least 40% of our enrollment be free and reduced lunch, and we do qualify for that. It is designed to raise the achievement of the lowest achieving students. This one is easy to spend because we use it to purchase the salary and benefits for all of our reading specialists. So they are paid for out of Title I money. We also pay for salary and benefits for 6 reading, the aides that work with the reading specialist. Their salaries are paid for. The family engagement nights, we have 2, one in the fall and one in the spring, parent nights. We are allowed to purchase materials for that through this grant. And then a portion of it also goes to the non-public schools in which our Dover resident students attend. So if one of our Dover students attends St. Rose, then some of that money follows them to St. Rose to deliver reading intervention to those students. I do have to write performance goals. So by the end of the year, Title I students will show growth as measured by the Acadience assessments that we use. 50% of the non-public Title I students will show growth. That's the goal that they gave me for that. And the Title I parents will indicate on a survey that they received quarterly newsletters and were satisfied with the level of communication that they received from their Title teachers. Title II is for improving academic achievement by improving teacher and principal quality. It's most often used for professional development in the area of teaching and learning and professional development and technology integration. And so we use it to offset the salary and benefits for our technology coach, for Samantha Helwig. 75% of her job is technology coach. She also serves as librarian at the high school. We are paying for me to go to the required conference that I have to attend. I have no choice but to attend that conference, and luckily these funds can be used to pay for that. And then some more curriculum writing, whether we pay for the substitutes for the teachers to write curriculum during the school year or pay them in the summer to write curriculum. And so I have 2 performance goals there, that the teachers who attend the workshops that are given by the technology coach will indicate a positive rating on a survey, and that the curriculum cuts will be board approved by the end of this school year. So Title III, I skipped over because I don't write Title III. Title III is for our ESL population. We receive such a little amount of money. I think it's like $15,000, something like that, that we join the consortium. We give that money to the IU, and in return, the IU provides us with what we need for our ESL teachers. So it's really a bargain to join that consortium instead of trying to spend $15,000 ourselves. We get a lot more out of it by joining the consortium, so we choose to do that. Title IV has 3 categories: well-rounded education, safety, and technology. So 20% of the money has to be used for well-rounded educational opportunities, 20% has to be used towards safe and healthy students, and then the rest, some money, has to be used for technology. So here's how we're spending it. We are funding the middle school STEM teacher, Mr. Mastrilli, so he teaches STEM for all 6th to 8th grade students. We are purchasing safety glass at Weigelstown. Currently, the glass that separates the front office from any visitor who comes in is easily penetrable. They can just open it right up and come right on in and gain access to the building. So we are purchasing some impenetrable glass that would make it much more difficult for anyone to enter the building through that partition. If you know where Libe Elementary's playground, you know it sits next to a really busy intersection, and just last year we had a traffic accident where the car actually went onto the playground. So we are going to install safety bollards, either pillars or balls, like the target balls, to prevent traffic from coming into the playground. And that is an allowable expense under Title IV. And then we're purchasing smart boards for classrooms that don't yet have the updated smart board. Okay, and so the performance goals, we want to increase the number of students who enroll in CTE and rigorous courses of study. We want to make the glass impenetrable, and we want to prevent motor vehicles from entering the playground. And the goal is that 80% of the teachers will say that the new smartboard increased student engagement and interaction during their lessons. And the homeless grant, that's an easy one to spend too. You want to go to the last slide? We spend it on some curriculum for, again, suicide prevention, transportation for homeless population. We are obligated to transport homeless students even if they go to a different school. We use it for basic needs, food, shelter, clothing, that type of thing, to help them secure some stable housing. Sometimes we'll pay for a hotel for the night if they've suddenly become homeless and they're living out on the street. The grant allows for us to pay for temporary shelter, and then we help them get set up with community partners. Our social worker and school counselors are the ones that really tell us who is in need, and then we use the money for those families. And I think that's it.
Okay, questions for Dr. Hauk?
I have a couple questions. The position for the transition.
Yeah.
That would you say middle school to high school?
High school into career.
Career, and so that wasn't a new position, right? So that was there before the ESSER's funding, or
I think, I'm not sure when we started that. I think it was a new position, but we didn't, it was a position we had planned and budgeted for. We just offset it with the ESSERS. So it was planned before ESSERS. We just used it to offset it for a little bit.
so when ESSER's goes away, what's our plan for that position?
Well, it's already in our budget because we only used it for last year. So that's already part of our budget. I just offset part of that salary for that first year, for the 21-22 school year, I believe. So that position's been in our budget. ESSERS, you're allowed to supplant, which means you're allowed to use that money for something that's already in your budget to just offset it. So that's what we did with that. We didn't create a position because of ESSERS. Does that make sense?
Okay. And then this new science standards, since
Yes.
LIU is already providing what materials for training?
No, they're just providing us with training.
So where they have access to those new standards?
They do. They're on the website through PDE.
They're already up.
They are.
Okay.
They just don't go into effect until the 25-26 school year.
Right. And what did you say Title IV, how much percentage went to the well-rounded education part?
Yes, I believe it's 30, but let me check. 20% goes to well-rounded.
So 2020 and then,
And then something. Now, I could spend 40 on well-rounded if I want. I have to spend a minimum of 20% on well-rounded, a minimum on safe and healthy, and then some money on technology. But I could do 60-30-10 if I wanted to.
has tech typically always gotten the smaller percentage?
They don't necessarily know. I could give 60. I could do 20-20-60. I could do 20 for well-rounded, 20 for safe and healthy, and 60. It's really just a matter of where we feel the need is.
The needs are.
Right.
Okay, that's all I have. Thank you.
On the homeless students' transportation, how many homeless students are we transporting?
I don't know the answer to that. I can get you that information.
Are they transported by vans?
Most often, yes.
And what's the furthest we go with them?
Don't know that either.
It varies depending on where the child was attending school when they became homeless, and the results of the meeting that we have with children, youth, and families, and someone from the other district and someone from our district to determine the best placement for that child.
And this is used by EMB vans, correct?
Yes.
And this is covered under the ESSERS funds?
Yes, it is an allowable expense. It's an expense we would have to incur anyway, but we are allowed to use the homeless grant money for
And how
that.
long do these funds last until we're going to have to pick up the tab?
They expire at the end of this school year in September of '24.
And what's the cost for spending right now to send them and pick them up?
I think that depends on where they're going.
We could get those numbers for you.
Sure.
Okay.
Anybody else?
Yeah, transition specialist, that is different from a standard guidance counselor, correct?
Yes, she works with our special education population of students, and she helps them to find work. After graduation, she takes them on field trips, gets them started on thinking about careers. So yes, that's different. She doesn't do any counseling.
Okay.
Yeah, she works with our special ed students.
Transition, excuse me. Transition planning is required in an IEP of a student 14 years and older.
Okay. Anybody else? Okay, thank you, Dr. Hauk. Okay, 22-23 results of operations. Mrs. Weaver.
Okay. It's not working. Turn it on. Okay. All right, sorry about that. So the first slide is a snapshot by category of what went out, what went in, and then the end result. And as you can tell, we have a net addition to fund balance of approximately $180,000. The next few slides after this are going to explain the budget to actual variances by category. So if you look at revenues, and I apologize, it's very small. I tried to fit a lot of information on one page. We had a positive variance of approximately $3.2 million. And in layman's terms, that means that Dover brought in more revenue than they expected. So within local revenue, there was an additional $310,000 in collected real estate tax revenue. Over the last 6 years, the collection rates were running at about 96.3. For 23-24, we're budgeting 96.5, along with a small increase in the taxable base of about 1.2%. Over the last, an additional $502,000 in EIT tax. The 23-24 budget was increased by $375,000 to reflect the estimated actuals. We also saw a decrease of $173,000 in delinquent real estate taxes. The 23-24 budget was also decreased in order to reflect estimated actuals. An additional $691,000 in interest revenue was due to favorable interest rates and cash flow analysis. We also increased the 23-24 budget to reflect estimated actuals, given the fact that we're hoping that the interest rates stay at where they are. So if you take a look at state revenue, the basic instruction and special education subsidy allocations led to almost an additional $1 million. The 23-24 budget was based on the governor's March budget, so the numbers actually are in there. The vocational education subsidy allocation led to another almost $100,000. That is also the 23-24 budget was based on the March of 23 governor's budget. The district received an additional $277,000 in PCERS reimbursement. The 23-24 budget was increased to reflect estimated actuals. We also received the PCCD Mental Health, Safety, and Security Grant, but that was awarded after the budget was passed. We saw an additional $165,000 during last year because of that. So within federal revenue, we received an additional $100,000 in Access Medicaid, but it was offset by a decrease of $76,000 in title funding. Expenditures saw a negative variance of approximately $1.6 million. So again, in layman's terms, it means we spent more than we had budgeted. We had a 2% difference in salaries, and that's primarily due to unfilled teaching positions, paraprofessionals, custodians, as well as the time between the unfilled positions in the business office. The overage in benefits is due to an adjustment necessary to true up our balance held by LBT. The 2023-24 budget was adjusted to compensate for the predicted change using the data that was provided to us by LBT. However, it all just depends on the way the claims trend over the actual amount. Because, for example, they had predicted a certain amount for 2022, 23, and we ended up having to put an additional $300,000 into expense just because claims had trended differently than they had originally anticipated. The overage in personal and professional services is due to an increase in students being educated through the LIU. Then we also saw an offsetting decrease in technical services. There were certain expenditures that were budgeted in technical services, but we reclassified to equipment, so it's really just a wash. It's just from one category to another category. 23-24 budget was adjusted to compensate for the LIU's predicted increase. The decrease in the purchase property expense was due to the timing of the North Salem roof project and payments to the contractor. And the overage in other purchase services was due to increased tuition costs and outside placements. We did increase the 23-24 budget to compensate for the predicted change. The difference in the supply budget to actuals is due to the cost of natural gas and electricity, which was offset by a reduction of use of general supplies. The increase in the cost of natural gas is due to the continuous increase, as we've all seen, in the cost of natural gas, as well as the fact that many electricity providers are now purchasing natural gas to fuel their plants. So it's like taking a double hit. However, Dover does participate with the LIU in an energy, oil, and gas consortium, and we have for the last 15 years. And as you saw during the spring, the utilities are procured through hedging, and there was a little discussion about that. The decrease in equipment was just a reclass of a journal entry from one category to another, just for financial statement reporting purposes. And the majority of the debt increase is due to the debt schedule built during the refunding of the 2015 bond, which was discussed at the presentation in April. And just as a reminder, there is $520K built into the 23-24 budget as outlined during the refunding. So circling back to actual revenues. There was, as we can tell, as I had mentioned in the beginning, there was a small addition to fund balance. But please keep in mind, the addition to fund balance was due to a tax increase. There would have been a fund balance usage of $313,000 otherwise. So yeah, this is just the history that you have seen previously. Are there any questions?
Miranda, question back on the benefits, because I know salary and benefits makes a huge portion of our budget. The claims, and maybe Christina can jump in on this, are the claims, did we see a spike in claims as a result of people coming out of COVID and now going back to the doctor or getting stuff that they had done that they had put off, during the COVID period, and that
Elective,
and hopefully
sir.
we see
Elective,
some of that will level off now going forward? Do we have a prediction on that or thoughts on that? Or?
So we did see an increase in probably our 21-22 claims of the electric surgeries, like your knee replacements, things that were pushed off most of 2020 and early 2021. As with most insurance claims, what you can't predict is some of the more severe illnesses that some of our staff has been facing, and that's really where you're seeing our increase of claims, not necessarily your elective surgeries or things like that, but some of the more serious illnesses that either cause an increase in the RX prescriptions. We have some members within Highmark that are on expensive prescriptions, or unfortunately have been faced with some very serious health issues. So that's what you're seeing, the spike in claims, and that's unfortunately what is so unpredictable with health insurance, is you don't know what each year is going to look like.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
Anybody else? Okay, thank you. Okay, that brings us to our first public comment period. This is a 30-minute period for items on or off of the agenda, 3 minutes per speaker. So if you have anything you would like to comment on, please come to the podium and state your name and address for the record. Okay, Board President's communication. We did not have an executive session prior to tonight's meeting. We will be having one after tonight's meeting to share the performance evaluation of Dr. Cartwright with her. So with that, we'll move into the discussion of the items on the agenda. So we will just start with Dr. Cartwright, if you want to walk us down through these items.
Thank you, Mr. President. The first one, PSBA officer and trustee election. You will see that there are just 1 or 2 candidates for each position, so we are asking the board to vote for those. if you are so inclined. Next week, you'll see that we have a tuition application to pay tuition from one non-resident, and then we have another request for a waiver of tuition from a non-resident student. The other highlights would be the occupational advisory committees and the meeting dates. That is a requirement per Pennsylvania Department of Education, Bureau of Career and Technical Education, so we bring that to you every fall around this time. The Every Student Succeeds Act, ESSA, letter of agreement, simply enables us to work with York County children, youth, and families to transport foster children specifically and share some information between the two entities or more if someone else is involved or another school district. You will see the WellSpan Philhaven Family-Based Services Agreement, and that allows some counselors to come into the buildings to see students who can't otherwise get counseling. There are 2 items there that Mrs. Weaver would like to discuss.
On the agenda are radios and antennas. They are used as communication tools between the bus drivers, district staff, and the garage. Bus drivers are not permitted by law to use a cell phone while operating a vehicle, which I did not know until Kim had shared that with me. The transportation provider has a direct contract with Triangle, who we're asking to use their services. Triangle maintains their own private radio system. For several years, the district has had multiple issues with base radios at the school buildings not being able to communicate with drivers. Issues faced include not being able to hear the drivers or communicate back. The problem lies with the antennas. They are not situated at the right locations, angles to ping off the towers needed to obtain a signal. The district had one location at the high school fixed by Triangle, which resolved the issue. It's extremely important for student safety to have a reliable communication mechanism between the driver and the district staff. And the next one is a purchase of a lift. The facilities department would like to take care of its aerial maintenance needs without having to rent a lift for every occasion. The current cost to rent a scissor lift is either $830 a week or $1,500 a month. The cost to purchase this certified used lift would be approximately $17,000. The Director of Facilities estimates that the facility department will use the aerial lift approximately 12 to 16 times per year. Some of the upcoming projects include the record board installation at the stadium, North Salem Gym scoreboard swap, replacement of parking lights, and exterior building wall pack lighting. So Tom did his research and looked into several different vendors and several different kinds, and he felt that considered the rental is in the budget, so he thought it would be best to get a certified used lift as opposed to purchasing a new one.
The next item we'd like to highlight is the DAE-SPA Memorandum of Understanding, and Mrs. Jacoby will talk about that.
Per the DAE-SPA contract, Christmas Eve and Christmas Day are paid holidays to all support staff. Christmas Day will be paid on Monday, December 25th, 2023. Christmas Eve, which is normally considered a paid holiday, falls on Sunday, December 2023. Per the contract, Christmas Eve would fall to Friday, December 22nd, 2023 to be paid to staff. However, per the board-approved 2023-2024 school year calendar, Friday, December 22nd is a school day. The support language contract states Monday shall be recognized as a holiday, shall be recognized for those holidays occurring on a Sunday, and Friday for those holidays occurring on a Saturday, provided, however, if either day is scheduled as a school day, then no holiday pay shall be granted. In order to honor the payment of Christmas Eve holiday being paid on Sunday, December 24, 2023, an MOU of understanding, we are requesting for this one-time exception to be approved by the school board so that the membership may have their full holiday pay this year.
And then you will see 2 policies here in the consent agenda that are not following our typical first and second reading, unless the board would like us to follow that procedure. The two policies on here are only on here because we agreed, or excuse me, we approved a DAEA contract last month. And these two policies are affected by the contract, and we want the policies to match the contract. So in number 514, policy number 3172, there's no change in content to the policy. It's just a number change. And then in 515, policy revision 336, personal necessity leave, in the DAEA contract, we changed some bereavement leave. So this change in policy adds contract language about bereavement leave. And I think that will do it for the highlights, unless there are questions about anything else, Mr. President.
Could we go back to item 504? We skipped over curriculum a little bit there. Could you talk about what is happening with the curriculum at that piece?
Certainly.
I'm clicking on curriculum, but it's not taking me there.
I'm having trouble with my internet, too.
I don't know specifically which ones are on there without looking at it, but
Showing honors chemistry 1, anatomy and physiology 1, biology and biology, honors biology.
okay, so those are the subjects that the teachers have completed the KUD charts for. So that will tell you exactly what students will need to know, understand, and be able to do in each of those subjects. So that's the first part of the curriculum. What they're still working on are the unit maps, where they take all of those things and break them up into units. So you see what's taught in Unit 1, what's taught in Unit 2, and what's taught in Unit 3. So I'm bringing those to you a little by little as they get completed, as teachers work on them. They spend early dismissal days and PD days working on them. Some departments get more time than others, that because of what the training is happening on those days. So as they are getting completed, I'm giving them to you. And then you don't get a K-12 curriculum all in 1 month to have to look over. So giving them to you a little at a time gives you a chance to actually read them.
Got it, thank you.
I have another question in regards to curriculum too. So all of the resources listed, like for instance, biology, I didn't see a textbook. Are they using a textbook right now to pull, for their, curriculum writing or?
I don't know if you've seen, I don't think they have an actual textbook that they use. They pull from a bunch of different resources to match the standards. The standards, especially in biology, are really specific. What they get tested on, and that's a tested course. So they get a Keystone exam in biology. So rather than purchasing a program that isn't matched to our standards, the teachers pull their own resources to teach what's in the curriculum.
So they write curriculum to standards, but use whatever resources they can, whatever the teacher deems necessary.
Yep,
to
and
meet
sometimes
the
they
standard.
create their own. They do their own experiments, they create their own, worksheets, or they create their own notes, or they pull a text. Yeah, so they kind of gather that based on the standards.
So in regards to that, my only concern would be when they, decide to pull a resource that might be, a little bit controversial, such as off the web or something like that. So how does that all get approved as far as their supplemental resources, like their resources that they're using?
Well, the resources should match the standards, so there shouldn't be a resource that talks about anything that's not in the standard. But we don't approve resources. We would be here forever approving every video and every article and every piece of text that a teacher uses.
So, is the whole internet available, or do you recommend using certain sites? Or do they say that these are the sites we're probably going to use, or anything like that?
No, the teachers, it's called curating. The teachers will look at a resource, they'll determine whether it's suitable for their class, and then they will embed it into their lesson as they see appropriate for the standards. So that's the teacher's discretion to be able to pull videos or pull articles that they like.
So for all of the curriculum listed, all the ones that are here, there's no text?
Correct.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions about any of these items?
Looking over the cost for the antennas, why is it more at one school than another? Is it the distance?
It's location, it's where how long it's going to take, where it's situated, it's just location of where they need to put it.
Anybody else?
I just have one question in regards to the lift issue. Is there any way we can take a look at subcontracting with some of these companies around here, just on specific days to bring one in?
I certainly can, I can speak to Tom about it. Certainly can.
Because I know a lot of these companies don't use them on a full-time basis, although they have that equipment. It just seems.
Okay, anybody else? Okay, discussion items, policies, first reading. Dr. Cartwright.
Thank you, Mr. President. The board and the public will see 4 policies for first reading here and the changes that are bolded and highlighted. The first policy, 710, use of facilities by staff. You'll see the current policy includes the authority and the guidelines. That's it for that policy. We would like to add the 2 small paragraphs that are bold and highlighted. And then the next 2 policies, records management and breach of computerized personal information. Those changes that are bold and highlighted are PSBA recommendations that we would like to go with. And then 830.1, governance, storage, and security is a brand new policy.
Okay. Questions or discussions?
I have a question in regards to the first one. 710. So the highlighted and bolded sections added, was that PSBA recommendation?
No, that's our recommendations.
Is there any particular reason or like anything that you've
Yes.
noticed happening?
Some people do
Okay.
things they shouldn't do.
I gotcha. Thank you.
Anybody else? Okay. That will then move us into our final public comment period for the evening. Again, this is a 30-minute period for items on or off of the agenda, 2 minutes per speaker. If you'd like to comment on anything, please come to the podium. Okay, any other comments or observations from our board members tonight? Okay.
I'm sorry, I thought
Okay.
Charlie was going to say something. I was just curious if there's anything scheduled coming up as far as a report from our SROs, anything happening in the district, like what kind of activity we've seen this far compared to last year, like all that stuff.
I would have to look at the timing of the last one, and the next one would probably be about a year from that one. I don't quite recall when that was, but that would be an annual report from the SRO.
I personally thought that it'd be nice to have more of like a quarterly report. Since our kids, have a lot they're going through, I just thought it'd be nice to know how things are going in each of the buildings. Just because sometimes there's hearsay, and to hear it from the SROs, just to get an update on just the conditions of the buildings and how things are going. And I don't know, maybe I'm alone in that thought, but
No, it should be something quarterly or monthly. I agree with you.
I think the board can decide if they want, how often you want reports and what exactly you're looking for. I'm not sure the SRO is the right person to give that report every month or quarterly.
that's the only person I thought to say, but if there's other people that can tell us, how are things going in the buildings, just for.
How about if I talk to you later about exactly what you're looking for?
Yeah.
Anything else? Okay, future meetings. We have our regular board meeting next Tuesday, the 17th at 6:00 p.m. in this room. So if there is no further business, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved. Second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? We're adjourned. Thank you.